Hi, my name is Daniel Grevelsen. I'm the founder of Figaf, and in this video I'm having a chat with our lead developer Ilya about what we have made to make it possible to do testing of SAP PI and CPI for that matter a lot easier. So the background is we had a large client that were doing a huge test with our tool to make it possible to test the EDI migration from Seeburger to B2B add-on. And in this process, we did learn quite a lot about where we needed to improve the tool, what kind of comparisons was really necessary for this to work. And we will cover that in details along this way. But I guess it ends up with like a 30-minute conversation about just the small improvements that we have made as a part of this process. So if you want to understand a little more about what the Figaf testing tool is without all of these details, there's also a lot of videos on figaf.com/testing where we'll just cover these things. So a lot of other things have been made into this release 2.14 among CTS integration for PIPO, which I'm really stoked about. A lot of improvement for CPI and stuff like that. So in this video, we just cover the testing part. So it's not just testing that we have done, but it just takes a long time to explain all of these cool things we've made to make testing a lot easier. I really hope you enjoyed this.
So today I have Ilya Nestron
Hello.
To be a part of the show. Ilya, could you introduce yourself?
So I'm a team lead in Figaf team, actually the architect and lead developer on the RT project on the Seeburger migration tool.
Cool. Yes. So for this episode, one of the things I wanted to cover is some of all the less tangible features that we have added to the new Figaf tool 2.14. And I thought the best way to showcase this was actually to get Ilya to give some idea about what these things were. So the big challenge we had was we had a customer that were doing a Seeburger migration from Seeburger to B2B add-on, and they needed to do a lot of testing of these things. And I think one of the first thing we found out was that, yeah, we had to create a specific tool to handle these test case creation. What did this tool do, or why did we create that, Ilya?
Actually, the first issue was exactly that we were not able to use recording, as recording in production system will require at first lots of time period, and customer already had a large amount of data which should be tested. And the format which they used, the metadata of these messages, payloads, they were stored in the way which obviously we couldn't predict. So we had manual test case upload from a long period of time, but usually the main idea of our old feature with the manual upload was just to upload some small amount of data to do a quick test when you're not able to record. Here we have a case when we will need to upload continuously millions of messages.
Yep.
So for a long period of time. Obviously, it required some more smart solution which will fully handle the special cases in the business logic and migrate data on a customer side to the format applicable for IRT.
So with this tool, yeah, and we decided not to use or enhance the existing one, but just to create it as a separate one, because after this migration has been done, it should not be used.
Yes, this is a separate application, which is some kind of adapter between the customer data and IRT.
So yeah, if you have big test cases or existing EDI archives or something like that and want to test either a migration or a B2B migration or a migration from some other platform to SAP PI, then this could also be a way this could be achieved. So one of the big things on this was they were a huge customer, and they created was like 10,000 plus test cases.
Yes, with the 1.5 million messages.
So that was something we did not really have anticipated once we started this project a couple of years ago. So we had, or I guess you had, a lot of ways to improve the scalability of the application. So what was that about?
Yes, actually, some additional words to the initial statement. That initially we thought about the way how usually testing should done in the CPU world, so that test cases should form some kind of coverage for scenario, right?
Mhm.
And this coverage will be used for regression to reproduce some errors or to do some experiments with the data, but we couldn't predict some kind of eager testing when you take just a bunch of data from production or from some system and test it fully. Obviously, in this case, your failure rate will be quite small if configuration is done properly. But if you at the same time, and the good thing that now we successfully handle this case when clients don't know which data should be tested. Obviously, if there are a large amount of partners, large amount of data, it's difficult to form this coverage.
Mhm.
So such coverage usually it's created when a scenario is designed. So depending on how scenario works, you can decide which data should be used. So this is the way how we are developers writing the unit test, for example, right?
Mhm.
But even in the unit testing, you can't cover the data fully. And approach which we got supported, in this approach, we can be sure that for all data provided by customer in exact periods, scenario works.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and coming back to to your question, Daniel, regarding the performance, yes, as a consequence, we've got some performance issues, so that IoT is distributed, has lots of distributed processes, and the performance of the distributed process, of the chain process, I would say, will depend on the timings in each part.
Yeah.
And
So
here to get the suitable concurrency rate and suitable single process execution rate, yes, we've got some challenges, but finally got a successful result. So this is a performance of comparison, throughput of comparison, performance of polling approach. Another requirement was also to use polling instead of the agent component, but both will be suitable for the same.
And I guess we even had some problems with that. We were bombarding the PI system and almost
yes.
So we also have to
throughput and performance of the message sending, obviously.
Yeah.
And especially message sending, it's more according to experience, it should be it should have the highest concurrency rate.
Yeah. So
As
a lot of a lot of small steps in it.
But at the same time, we are able to do a stress testing, at least to send messages, probably not measure the metrics, but it's some thoughts about future improvements, by the way.
Mhm. So a performance monitor of your PI system. Then one of the other things is probably we take in the other direction is the comparison. I guess that was one of the things that you also needed to cover in this. So once you have sent these messages, so the way we are testing is this thing that we have a set of test data and input and output of the original methods, and then we compare this output with the output that we got from this new example. And for that, we needed to create some different improvements to make it possible for this to work. Tell me about some of those things.
Yeah, so actually, just for example, I will talk in the context of that test case. So it's not really difficult. It's done. It's from our QA system. In production system, obviously, we have much more interesting cases, but obviously, I can't share it. Yeah, so let's just run this test case. to get the
I see you
message
got a lot of
processed.
errors here.
Yes, it just a test. It's having the error doesn't mean that it's a bad. So this is another thing which we learned. But obviously, to get documentation done, finally, the idea is to get this case success. So, for example, if we look at the result now, we will see that the difference between the expected message and actual result is the following. So I know that the date will be always different, so it should be ignored. Let's set it in runtime. Also, the identifier in the line, yes, in this case, it has different formatting, but I don't care about the formatting. I need the real value. So I know that in the production system, in the expected message, it's formatted, it's padded by zeros up to 6 positions. So to get them compared with the formatting, this is actually the first option, comparison option, which we added. It's so you can use comparison options in this following way. So for XML, it's XPath. And then in the double curly braces, you can put comparison options provided by IRT. For more reference, you can check user manual. So for formatting, there is a limited amount of format options, but here I want to format it as an integer. As integer number. So in this case, on the right side, this string will be formatted as 10. This string on the left side will be formatted to the 10, and then it will be compared. So in the price,
Could you try just to run the comparison now? Update?
Yes. By the way, another thing to get comparison done immediately, so without rewriting the test case, we also added enhancement because for large amount of data, you can't just briefly rerun the test case. It will take some time. So that's why we have recomparison option.
And this will just take the test data in your test set and ignore.
Yes. So we can see immediately that configuration was applied. So we have date and ID compared. Also, quite important thing that another option, just for example, in some schemas you can have elements as empty on one side and missing on another side. For example, schema in old version, for example, supported empty elements. In the new version, it doesn't support, and this is okay.
And this is really something that you're using if you're doing EDI or IDOC creation, where the old IDOC format is different or has some different fields that need to be filled in, or you're fetching the data from a different source. Then those values exist, or the fields are there, but they're not really used. And we would just have ignored that, but I guess that was not really a good idea. If there was actually some data in this optional data that was changed, then you would not see that. So you cannot just ignore these empty missing features.
Yes, it's very important. So what's the difference, for example, between this option and if you put, for example, just as like that? So in this way, you will ignore optional data element fully. So even if there will be some value, you will not see the difference, it will be ignored. But using with the option empty missing, it will ignore only the case when it's empty on one side and missing on another side. And this is the benefit of this option.
Okay, cool.
Yes, this is XML result. We also enhanced and added support of similar comparison option for edefect types, so for EDI types for edefect and 612.
Yeah, so there you have the same option, and there it also applies these things about number.
Yes, syntax is a bit different. You can configure ignoring on data element level, on segment level, on component element level. So depending on what's the type of document, edefect or X12.
When we're talking about this, one other thing we added or improved is this order expression. What's that, and when do you use the order expression?
Yeah, in our example, order expression is not really used. It's not even configured. on this scenario because this is a dummy test case which has one inbound message and one outbound message. But situation is different when, for example, we have this split case with the multiple outbound messages. When we build this case and run it, then after that we receive messages and we need somehow to match these messages. Obviously, we need somehow to distinguish them, right?
Yeah.
To match them properly one by one with the expected, and this is actually the root purpose of the order expression. So, for example, if we imagine that this test case has many outbound messages,
so we would split it per line item, right?
Yes. So if we, for example, we could really split this this message and prepare 3 different outbound messages, then each this outbound message will have obviously this thing as a content with some root element, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, what really can be do is you can use ID as a order identifier. So order identifier, it's xpath, and for example, if we update it here in the comparison configuration, we'll discuss it a bit later. And yes, in this case, I will need to rerun it because, I'm sorry, it's not enough. We also need to update. Yes, now, by the way, there will be an expected message because I haven't updated the order number in the test case. So in the test result, you see it was updated, but not in the test case. So after the changing of order expression, it's really important to not forget to change, recalculate order numbers on the test case. The same option is available on the global test case page, so don't care if you have hundreds of test cases, you don't need to open each of them. So now when it's recalculated, we can rerun it and it will work. So the idea here that you'll be able to distinguish different messages, and so what maybe something wasn't applied. Maybe some mistake in the configuration, probably. Got it.
I guess this is the cool thing about doing online demos.
Yes, especially when
you got a namespace, probably. That's the
Yeah, so never mind. So actually, this scenario shouldn't be used with the order expression, but in the case when you already have data prepared for usage with multiple messages, there usually you can find something in the payload. And what should be also highlighted, probably you've briefly seen that, let's open the previous, let's remove it. Yes, probably the issue with the namespace. I guess to get it working, we need to do it easier and just put not the full path. I also recommend to do not use the full path because it can lead to some, I don't know, it's not an issue. We need to find something different probably. So yeah, probably you've briefly seen the link and the place where I updated this thing. This is another feature which we implemented, comparison configuration, and this is a separate storage of comparison settings. Now, this is very important thing for the cases which we found because it provides dynamic. It provides a way to configure comparison dynamically. Previously, we had it on test object level. But having it on the test object level doesn't resolve the case when a single, for example, in the if we talk about PI PO, for example, if ICO can be used with the many operation mappings, and different operation mapping must have different comparison settings because output is different as well.
So that would be the case where you have, for instance, an order IDOC going out that can be sent to multiple different partners with multiple different formats, and you want to do comparison of some of these in different ways.
Yes, yes. And comparison configuration, it has, it's the main fields here are messages, partners, and integration objects. At least one value should be put to any of these field. So for example, here I configured that this comparison configuration should be applied for all test cases which have the message label testing tools VPI. This is just for our demo. And it's a case which I had previously. All of them have exactly this
label.
But
you would obviously add partner numbers or something like that.
Yes, so this is a way how you can separate configurations, and having the same integration object, you can define different configuration per message and partner. Yes, so and together with the other fields, it provides really flexible and dynamic way to handle such differences in which scenario can support internally.
Yeah, cool. I guess another feature we also got in, was it this release or earlier, was the correlation of messages. So if you had multiple IDOCs that were grouped into one EDI message in some kind of a process, that was also something we added some way to handle, right?
Yes.
When was that? Was it also?
It requires obviously a collection on PO side, so it should be handled. Collection should be handled out of IRT, but we have some basic configuration in the test configuration of the object, and if you really need it, you can configure aggregation settings.
But that's probably not something for the. It's a little complicated. Setting.
It should, probably in this case, it should be handled separately, I guess, for each client, because the main problem is that PO by default doesn't support aggregator.
Yep.
So at least I haven't. I'm not a PO expert, obviously, but I haven't seen the aggregator pattern implemented on PO system. Splitter, yes, but not the aggregator.
Okay, cool. Next thing we also, and I guess that was also part of the performance improvement, was this new report generation.
Yes, right? Also quite important thing that now we support, instead of the previous, probably somebody already seen it, Excel reports. Yeah. Now we support bundled CSV report strategy.
So and why would you use that?
Yes, the main purpose is the amount of messages and load. So when you deal with several thousands, or maybe up to maybe 50,000 messages in one test suite, it's a challenge to do some analysis if you have just plain Excel. In the previous Excel report, it's good to visualization for just to briefly check it. But if amount of data is very large, at first it's quite large cost to build this exactly Excel file. And what's
so
more
the
important,
API we used, or the library we used, wasn't really scalable if you got over a large
maybe
number.
We use it not in not so efficient way, but the copy function, yes, copy function suffers if at some point of time. So as alternative, what is much, it takes less time on disk to keep the same amount of rows, and easy to analyze it. So it's exactly the CSV, bundled CSV reports. It contains in the following the following parts. So let me get it downloaded, because this is just a CSV export. It's not the thing what I wanted. So bundled CSV report contains 3 files. The one file gives you information about test runs in the test suite. So just brief information which you already seen in the standard in the previous report. Ignore list, which also quite useful for analysis. Yes, and having it as CSV, also you can open it using the Excel, right? So it gives you really cool possibility to analyze, to apply sorting, filtering, etc. So to build some metrics, some documents on your site, it's the best thing. This is to transmitted data. Another is a process messages report. So per message and partner, it gives information about how many messages were sent, how many messages were received with success status, error status, unexpected, unfinished, etc. Not
So
compared
you
to
can
unfinished.
report how this processing went and how many messages you have tested each delivery.
Yes, yes. In that example, of course, it's not so powerful, but when
If you
there
have a
are
couple of more
10,000
partners,
messages
of course.
for 200, 500 different message partner combinations, it's really useful.
So you can see that for this partner, we have tested invoice and orders. Yep.
Yes, and actually, finally, this is a diff report. I already have it opened. So per message partner and diff state, old value, new value. It shows amount of affected pursuits list, affected messages count, and some related to strand IDs. Not all. So if you have lots of them, it will print only 5, if I'm not mistaken.
And
Because
this is way where you are, instead of showing all 20 different errors, you're just showing we got an error that was earlier 1.11 and now 1.80, and it just says correlate this to the smallest amount. So if you got the same errors in all your document, you'll just see we got this one error, but in 100 documents.
Yes, the benefit of this kind of report, you see side by side which value, which diff was in the old and new version. And this is, again, this is Excel, so you can analyze it, prepare some documentation, etc.
Send it to the business so they know what to do with.
Yes. And the same reports, they're available in runtime format generation, so you can select any test suite runs, for example, and you can build diff report and or, for example, process message report. So they all will be available. And this is a good thing. For example, if you did finished some large wave of testing, you can select many test suite runs and prepare some overview. Especially this is really useful regarding the process message report, because here it will calculate all metrics with how many messages you sent and received from a PO system.
Cool. And I guess now you're talking about large tests that one of the things is obviously you'd find some of these bugs, and then you'll try to see how does this new message work and how do we actually run this and fix this, right?
Yes. For example, again, on our QA, we don't have so large test cases, but again, if we let's open from that test run, some of them with the free messages. So now this test run has just free messages. But again, if we have like 3,000 or 5,000 messages,
you did not want to run
such
all
amount
of that again just to check if the message mapping was updated correct.
Yes. For example, imagine that we have issues only with 10 messages. So what to do, right? Developers told that he fixed the problem. You want to check it, but resending of whole test case will take, that it will take, for example, a few hours. Not just because sending will be so slow, but processing on the PO side can take some time. It depends on scenario fully.
And also in this case, they're doing a lot of tests concurrently, so it just
it will pollute the system really. Yeah. So to resolve it, you can select required messages, required results which you want to extract. So related messages from the test case will be moved to the new test case. So for that purpose, we have the option extract related source data as a test case. So it creates some kind of test case projection. So let me show it in action. Let's create the new test suite. So here it's created the new test suite with the test case, which has the same title, message, and partner, but with the projection prefix
and a timestamp. Yeah.
Yes, and the timestamp, and you see that it used only one. It added only one selected message.
It's and then we can run this, and we can see if it gives the same kind of result, and if it does, we can then test the full test data again, because you anyway want to do a full regression to make sure that the full test case has not been modified. So if you fix one bug, does that introduce new bugs? So you cannot really just test one thing without testing the full load.
Yes, yes. And as alternative, so I shown that you need to select testing results, but sometimes you need to care only about the status. So for example, you want to extract only unfinished entries or only unfinished and error entries. So for that case, you can use the same option without selection, and it will take, you have options, keep only successful and skip all compared. So in the second case, it exactly will extract only this case with the unfinished state. So not working cases, in other words. And as alternative, the same thing you have on the test suite run. So where you have groups of test runs. So in real life, there can be several hundreds of them. And again, if you want to make a projection of the whole test suite, you can use the same approach. You can click extract without selection, so it will take extract test cases from all test runs using the selected strategy. It's also very useful. In other words, you can have test suite with the several thousands of the messages, even 100,000, no problem. And using the extraction, you can you can create test case just with the small amount of messages which really cause problems, and use it for regression testing until all of them are not finished, and then you anyway of course will need to go back to your old test suite and rerun it. At least rerun the part. So obviously in the test suite you can have some test runs with the finished testing, and you don't want to rerun it, so you can select which ones you want to rerun and do it from here, for example. It also simplifies and minifies the load on useless load on PO system, or not only PO, the same approach is available for CPI.
Cool. Yes, so I think this was one of the bigger changes, or bigger packs of changes that we have added. Because simply there was this requirement to scale the system. Anything we did not cover?
I don't think so. I guess we covered all major parts. Of course, there were tons of minor improvements, etc.
Yeah, cool. But yes, Ilya, thanks for sharing this. I hope you like the approved, or you like this a little more technical, in-depth session than me just explaining these things. If you did, just hit the like button. If you're on YouTube, would appreciate that. Cool, Ilya. Thanks for being on here and giving us this insights.